I'm Shannon Allred. I'm from Brennan Road. We partnered with De Novo and moved our existing location, our J.D. Edwards environment, from a shared tenant space in AWS to OCI. And I'm going to tell you, we are not going over just the positive points. We're going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. There was a lot of good. There was some bumpy things that happened.
And there was definitely one item that was very ugly.
Yes, but I try to be as positive as possible, but we are bringing up those negative things as well. And also, we had some things that had nothing to do with the move that just happened to happen the day of go live. So we'll talk about that too, and the things that we all experienced. So anyway, Brown and Root, we're a privately held company. We're owned 50% by a public company, and the other 50% is owned by a venture capital company. This slide does not say that we were sold in July. That acquisition will be final in November, only the venture capital side. So this is a little under. Last week I think we paid 11,200 employees, but that changes every week. It'll go up to like 12,000 and drop back down. But one thing you see currently, all those dots are in the U.S. That's also about to change. So we are an engineering and construction maintenance turnarounds. Our customers, we're not going to build a house for you, and we don't really do a lot of government work. We're in the plants. So EPC projects, LNG, pulp and paper, all of those kinds of companies. So we handle, like when Harvey hit, we were in a lot of those plants. We were providing trailers, we were providing dehumidifiers, doing all that. And another thing that's really kind of cool, our company actually hired individuals to go in and gut our employees' houses, so that and then they were going and buying truckloads of sheetrock or whatever that component was, and the employees paid for it. Yeah, all the different. So when you're rebuilding after one of those storms, everybody's hitting the same component at the same time. So like Lowe's and Home Depot won't only let you get like 4 sheets of sheetrock. Well, we were buying truckloads in like Iowa and bringing it in and putting it in a warehouse, and then our employees were able to purchase it from us at our cost. Now, not completely altruistic because they were paying for it, but it did make it easier. So I'll let Paul take over for the De Novo perspective.
Sure. So De Novo, we're J.D. Edwards Managed Services partner. We do J.D. Edwards in the cloud. We basically specialize on the intersection between modern hyperscale cloud, specifically OCI, and J.D. Edwards. And our customers, for the most part, love us.
Yeah. And even the ones that love you, some of them just don't fill out surveys.
We talk about it internally. It's called survey fatigue.
Well, and you get them, it's a lot. So anyway, but yeah, so that's who I am.
That's who I am.
We've already told you that. So, okay, initial scopes. So we had to make a decision as to whether we wanted to move clouds and our MSPs. So if you've shopped managed service providers, different ones focus on different clouds. And so for us, the first decision was what cloud is the best cloud for us. And we went through the whole gamut of providers, and we went through a full RFP. We actually went through 2. So we did an RFP 2 years prior to actually changing, and our current provider reduced rates significantly. And we had so many other competing projects that we weren't going to be able to do that we took the cost savings and stayed where we were. And that's relevant later. And then 2 years later, we were in a situation where we felt like it was detrimental to our environment to stay where we were. We were experiencing issues because we were staying current and our provider was not encouraging that. We were actually even having to provide training to our CNCs. Luckily, I'm in a position where I knew where that training was and how to get it, and I'm sending it to them. And obviously, that's not the ideal situation. So eventually, through over a almost 4-year process, we chose de novo and OCI. To level set, at the time that we were moving, we were in a shared tenant space, we were on UN8, and we were on 9281 tools. So 2 years prior, Paul was working for another provider, and he sat down and he told us, you got to go to AWS. AWS is the only system that works for y'all. It's the only thing that makes sense. So we're sitting at the conference table, and they've gone through their little spiel, and I'm like, okay, Paul, I got a question for you. 2 years ago, you told me I had to go AWS, and today you're telling me I have to go OCI. JDE runs better on Oracle products. That's where we need to be. I said, so tell me what changed besides your paycheck.
That was a great question. I said, so give me 2 weeks. I will come back and walk you through the entire process. So this is now 2 weeks later. So it basically kind of started with the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So it's kind of hard to read from the back of the room, but you can see down in the lower left-hand corner.
The slides aren't online, so you can download them if you need.
Circa 2028, Oracle OCI was very much a minority cloud. There wasn't much adoption. It was barely getting tracked by Gartner at the time. And then just kind of watching its trajectory over time. So 2019, we're starting to move a little bit to the right, moving up, and 2020, 2021 continued positive move. We broke into the Visionaries quadrant in 2022, and in 2023 made it to the Leader quadrant. So one of the main things that I'm looking for in terms of just kind of the bona fides of the cloud is this going to be an option long term, or is this something that a company's kind of dipping their toes in, deciding whether or not they want to make strategic investments in it? Is really a lot of that Gartner research. And typically it's hard to go wrong with any of the options that are sitting there in the Leader quadrant. So then you take everyone that's in that Leader quadrant and you start kind of comparing the options. So one of the things that was very interesting, and honestly, I'm very big AWS fan historically. I think
his twin brother runs JDE support at AWS, or his brother, not twin.
Yeah, not my twin brother, but my brother, Chris's former boss. He's over at AWS, and AWS is a fantastic option. But one of the things that you'll notice is that they are regressing. So part of what they're running into is just the amount of technical debt that they created internally, because they were the first mover, and they were blazing the trail and figuring things out, figuring out what worked, what didn't work. And you basically ended up with a situation where you had 19 versions of different ways of doing things on AWS, and you never know which one they're going to deprecate at any given time. So basically, you take that, you kind of look at what all of your options are in terms of stability, cost, performance, and start tracking it out, and a pretty clear picture starts to emerge. So one of the huge advantages that OCI has is flexibility. So most of the other cloud providers that you go to, you get stuck in these fixed ratios between CPU and between RAM. So I want for 2 vCPU, I'm going to get 16 gig of RAM, I'm going to get 8 gig of RAM, or I'm going to get 32 gig of RAM. That tends to be the increments that it comes in. And if you want anything other than that, you end up in a situation where you're overbuying. So just kind of walking through the economics real quick. So this is looking at a Windows-based workload, and if you're talking about on-demand rates for a system with 4 vCPUs, 32 gig of RAM, Microsoft AWS pretty much on par, $318 per month on-demand rates. Or if you commit to 3 years, meaning all the flexibility that you hear about with the cloud, you're actually giving up. You're saying I'm gonna do this for the next 3 years. I'm not gonna change anything. So you're locking into that. You'll get better rates. GPC just a lot more expensive with that. Oracle on OCI for the same thing, $214 per month, and you're not locked into any long-term situation. So if you're in a scenario where you're using a particular technology and that technology does not work for you, there's problematic issues with it, and you need to migrate, you have no really bad commercials that you have to unwind. You literally just move to the other. We'll get a little bit more into that in detail. But I want to take this example and talk about, so on this particular example, what happens if we try to scale this up? We need 16 more gig on this particular server. What do the economics look like then? Well, it's really interesting. So on Microsoft, they do have an instance type where I can get 54 gig of RAM with that. So I'm overbuying RAM. Not the end of the world. RAM's not that expensive. AWS, I'm not just overbuying RAM. I'm now having to overbuy CPU. And honestly, on all these providers, the cloud infrastructure itself, the compute is relatively cheap. What's expensive and what gets you is any of the components that are licensed by CPU, like the operating system. So now I'm overbuying CPU, I'm overbuying RAM, and I'm also overbuying the Windows operating system because CPU is driving its cost. Same situation with GPC. On Oracle, all I'm doing is I'm just adding the additional RAM. So I'm just paying for that incremental RAM. So what does that look like from an economic standpoint? And you can see the numbers get pretty dramatic. So on demand, $600, $700 a month. 3-year commits, I'm looking at $400 to $600 a month. OCI, that is the $232 a month. So when I was at the previous organization, and so Chris Nowak is very familiar with this because I participated in an RFP they ran at the time. And I actually gamed out all the numbers between AWS and OCI. They were trying to figure out where to go. And I came back with actually some very specific recommendations about why you would want to choose one versus the other, depending on the company's strategic vision. But the underlying economics of this really struck with me. And part of why I ended up at De Novo, we only do OCI. And the math is the math. I mean, there is a 30 to 40% cost advantage on OCI compared to the other clouds, and we haven't even gotten to storage price performance. This is just the generic compute stuff. So something I jokingly refer to as Paul's law of J.D. Edwards performance. 90% of the time, your bottleneck in J.D. Edwards is the database. And 90% of the time on the database, it's disk I/O. And J.D. Edwards runs fantastically on pretty much every major hyperscale cloud that's out there. OCI, AWS, Azure, GPC. But on these other clouds, to get that price performance, you end up having to ransom your firstborn. So this is an example of if you want 500 gigs of storage and 50,000 IOPS. Now, one thing I do want to throw out here is this is information I put together for Brown and Ruth. This is the actual slides from a year ago. Some of this has changed, where some of these other cloud vendors have introduced new storage tiers, have made this a little bit more competitive than it was. But this still paints an accurate picture where when people see that Oracle number at the bottom, $47 a month for that compared to the other cloud options, they think there's a typo. I missed a zero on the Oracle option.
You missed a comma.
I missed a comma. Yeah. And what's going on is Oracle was extremely late to the cloud game, and they needed some way to radically differentiate themselves. And they chose the battleground as actually two things: storage price performance and network egress. Network egress not being as big of a deal for the JD Edwards community. So, okay, 50,000 IOPS, maybe I don't need that one. What happens if I just back everything back down a tier? And the numbers get a lot closer then, because their mid-tier options aren't that bad, but still I'm getting half the performance for, in some cases, 3 times the cost. So it's the main thing that I'm always looking for is how do I optimize that storage performance. So anyways, that was why Paul changed his mind and is basically all in on OCI.
Okay, so our project timeline. So we started our project in January of 2025 with a go live of May 14th. We had to be out of our contract with our existing MSP by the end of June, and I don't like to go live. I don't want to push it that far. And after the end of June, we would go month to month, and our hosting, and so we were not we didn't see our Amazon bill at all. It was all embedded into our bill with that provider. And so our monthly cost, if we went over by a month or two, was going to double. So at the time, we were spending roughly $51,000 a month for our managed services and our hosting. So that would have been $102,000 a month if we don't hit that June 30th deadline.
And just kind of one part of the dynamic is that other provider on AWS is aligning everything to kind of those 3-year commits to get that aggressive pricing. So as soon as you go to month to month, everything flips over to those on-demand rates that they're dealing with.
So, we, in November, so we had a 90-day thing that we had to tell our vendor that all that, but we actually did it very early. We wanted to be very open and very transparent about why we were leaving, what was going on, and during that time frame, they were going through some internal changes. So when I put in the ticket for the project to start the move to OCI, and they send us our data, no problem. And they go, oh, but by the way, your central objects and your path code, they're our proprietary data. Uh-huh. And I'm calling everybody I know, and I don't know if y'all seen me floating around the conference. At this point, I know a lot of people. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. So we made the request. You sent me the document. It was like right at Thanksgiving or Christmas. It was a holiday.
Yeah, I think it was Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So I sent it to them, and they said no. And I said, what? What do you mean no? So we keep working with them, and we reach out to the people at that provider that we had been with since 2017. So it wasn't like we just left. I mean, we had been there a long time, and we had established ourselves as a very good customer. And then they're just like, you want your new provider to set up your... So I'm like, I want my new provider to set up security that I paid an outside consulting team to do? I'm like, no, we can't do that. Plus, all of our custom code, our core JD Edwards is not very customized, but we have some completely custom things outside of that we developed ourselves.
Your versions, your processing options,
I
your
mean,
data
all
selection.
of that. Yeah. And I'm like, no, we can't do this. So I'm going to put my plug in on being involved in Quest, because it's now been 9 weeks. And we've literally now obtained outside counsel, and we are about to file a lawsuit because we're at our wits' end. We don't know what else to do. And I sent an email to Ward Quarles, and I said, Ward, I'm in a situation with a vendor, and I don't know how to handle it. I do not want this to go to court and get ugly. So he asked me if I was available for a call. He called me up. I explained what's going on. 3 days later, we had our database. What had happened is this massive company that, if you've ever been acquired or worked for a company that was acquired, the legal systems teams don't always understand the JD Edwards network infrastructure, and they were tying it to some other Oracle systems that proprietary data lives within those areas, and they thought we were trying to steal their proprietary data. And so it was this whole thing, but it worked out. We got our stuff. However, because of that, we had planned to move and do it, instead of doing a lift and shift, we'd planned to move and improve. So we were already on 9281. We were going to go to 9293, or to whatever it was out in May, and we were going to go to UN9. I'm very thankful we did not do that now, because then we wouldn't have known when things happened. But we did end up, we cut over on time. We were actually under budget, but we did not deliver the full project. So we are currently in the middle of our code project, which is not embedded in our current contract. So yes, it's an internal cost, but there's not an additional cost for that. Okay, so how do you keep from having the problems we had? So this is actually now in our contract with De Novo, but it's something that they offer to their customers. And Paul, I'm going to let you explain this.
So there's, I don't know if anyone's ever heard the saying, never attribute to malice that which can adequately be explained by confusion or incompetence. And a lot of times whenever you have merger and acquisitions, that always happens. You're dealing with people, you trust the people, but are those necessarily going to be the same people that you're dealing with 3-4 years down the road? So you need to make sure that whenever working with a managed services provider, that it is crystal clear in the contract who all of this belongs to. And so our basic position is we're just the custodians of it. We don't own it. The customer's data is the customer's data. The customer's system is the customer's system. And literally, this is something that we put into all of our contracts, which basically outlines our obligations to customers if we ever part ways. And that is to make that process as frictionless as possible. So it's one of the things that if you're ever looking at signing up with a managed services provider, talk with them about this. This is PowerPoint's uploaded, right?
Yes.
All of this language is in there. Feel free to steal the language. Ask them to put this in their contract too. It's basically just a safety net. I think most people are all operating in good faith, but a lot of times when those organizational changes happen, things just get confused and things aren't very clear.
Yeah, and I will say again, this was not the people that we dealt with at Day-to-Day's fault. It was purely, in my opinion, a misunderstanding by their legal department. They didn't know us. They didn't know anything about JD Edwards. And so it was not an ill intent thing, and I'm not going to say that provider's a bad provider, but a shared tenant space was not what we wanted, because we wanted to be able to start taking advantage of the links to AI and those things. And when you're in a shared tenant space, you might end up with another customer's data because it's all in the same bucket. And so, also now with the way our contract is set up, should we decide to stay on OCI but go to another managed services provider, we just take our environment with us and then they take it over.
Sure. They own the tenancy.
Yeah, so we completely own that tenancy, so hopefully we'll never have to move again. But in that situation, that's what we had to do. So now, but in 2016, when we made this decision, we were in a different world. Who cared about AI? I mean, the business is a different place. I mean, so anyway, cutover happens. So, so we're in the middle of testing, and it's in the middle of go live, and we're all literally, there's two things we've still got to test, and I don't normally have production access. My consultants don't normally have production access, but our standard practice is for cutover, we usually we get elevated access should we need to do something. Well, my security person, well, first of all, my boss was in Costa Rica, which tells you how much she trusts us because, you know, she was in Costa Rica. And
this must have been some expensive texts I sent her.
All that's covered. But we're, and so I'm wanting to test an orchestration that creates work orders from our time entry solution. But I need to be able to delete it because I don't want some made up work order in production. And then I needed to pass a line of time from there, and I needed to delete it. And my security officer was like, well, no, I don't have approvals for you to have your access elevated. I'm like, I'm doing it on the bridge call with you watching. And so, do you know how to, I mean, but nobody on the team had access. So normally 2 weeks before we elevate access, and we actually keep that elevated access for 2 weeks after, but this was just a different thing. So that was funny. Okay, unrelated issues with bad timing. So we had a VPN issue, and none of our satellite offices, so our core offices that have the VPN built in and they don't, you know, like you're at Oracle, but none of our satellite offices could connect to JD Edwards. And we're like, oh my gosh, you know what happened? Well, it was truly a VPN issue. It was not anything to do with the move, but nobody knew that at 6:30 on Monday morning when all these people are calling saying they can't get in. And then my favorite one, no read Nancy and no read Ned. You know, we've sent 5 communications. We've had calls with people. We've sent newsletters out. Your link to JD Edwards is going to change. Now, we had kept the old environment up, but we had changed everybody's passwords so that only like key team members could go in if we needed to check something day one. We ended up not really needing to because the data conversion was sufficient. But they were all trying to log in, so we got 183. Now, we only have 350 users. We got 183 password reset tickets that Monday morning. And so we were literally calling every one of them going, what URL are you using? That's not the right one. And we had actually done it in a way where not everybody was even able to get to the URL, but we had to leave it open to a certain extent so that should we need to check something from the old environment, we could. When we moved our third-party apps, as well as JD Edwards, so because we do a code current project every year, we had all these scripts and all these things that we do, but now we're moving Go Anywhere, which is also our secure file transfer portal, expense management in April, right before we go live in May, had moved from a third-party system into JD Edwards. And so expense management, everybody in the company uses. Well, all of our distribution lists didn't encompass all those people. And so we had to really rethink that because people that never use JD Edwards would use large file transfer and secure file transfer and all this other. So we were like the week of go live realizing that, yeah, it's a problem.
It's funny when
Chris and I were doing the similar project a couple years ago, I think you made the comment that this isn't a J.D. Edwards project. This is a third-party integration project.
And we did a really good job with our third parties. We had them all moved early. We were just running dual, and they weren't accessed, but we had them all set up, configured, everything the week before. And so at cutover, we weren't moving any of that information. So we go live. Now, let me go back real quick. We did 2 full, complete parallel payroll tests, all the way from time entry into billing. We tested, and we didn't run, so normally we run 9 different payrolls a week. We ran it all as one great big huge payroll of 12,000 people with our time cards. I mean, Chris, I know y'all are probably in the same situation. One employee's time card might be 60 or 80 records. And then it goes through contract billing and it gets broken out. So we felt like by running those massive processes together and then turning around and running work file gen and rev gen and all that en masse, that we were really stressing the system. We didn't do a true load test just because the cost benefit analysis, I mean, and that's what was recommended by De Novo. But we go live and everything's going on and people are complaining about this and that, which is, they didn't clear their cache. Actually, they didn't have to clear their cache this time, but there was just a few little things. The initial load of screens were slow because, you know, it's new servers, and it's going to be. But by lunchtime, we're literally, processes aren't processing. I mean, and we're like, and we've got a bridge chat, we were federated, and so we were teamsing back and forth. And I mean, we finally took the system down like right at noon.
So what we're seeing on the database server at this time is the CPUs on the database server are flatlining at 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we're dead. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? So, anyway, I like my little SpongeBob 4 hours later. Anyway, so I'm gonna let Paul explain what that issue was, because I'll be quite honest, I could repeat the words he's told me, but I don't know what any of them mean. It's kind of like singing a song in another language.
Yeah, so there were a couple queries that were identified that were causing some bad behavior within the database. So those, you know, subsequently got fixed, but the short fix for it was, let's just throw more compute at it. So we shut down J.D. Edwards during the middle of the day on Go Live, which nobody wants to. But we threw a bunch more compute at it, brought it back up, and got everything operational. So it's, again, one of the cool things with the flexibility on OCI is, you know, had we been locked into one of those 3-year reserved instances, etc., scaling that up would have been a totally different scenario. You know, just in terms of the mechanics as well as the economics. So one of the things that did not immediately come out kind of day 1, day 2 of the project, but materialized over time, was deficiencies with a specific Oracle technology on OCI, and that was optimized 3 dedicated hosts. So for Microsoft licensing optimization, there are some things that you can do where if you have the entire physical machine dedicated to you, you've really got a lot of options in terms of optimizing how you're procuring those licenses from Microsoft, whether it's cloud or license included through the cloud vendor, or you're doing bring your own license. Well, there's a problem with the optimized 3 dedicated hosts running in a Windows environment where after you hit a certain amount of aggregate I/O on the host, the entire host just basically throws up its hands and dies.
So we were having spontaneous shutdowns at least once a week. And it was progressively getting worse. So we had started bi-weekly restarts of the system just to keep things running. And then we had made a plan that we were going to have another outage and we were going to move everything over the 4th of July. That we put a plan together, that's what we were going to do. Well, the Friday before that, we'd already done a shutdown on Wednesday. And what was funny, it was spontaneously rebooting on slower transactional days. So we kill our system on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. But it was shutting down on Wednesday by itself. I mean, which I would expect it to do it. I mean, when we're running payroll. So Tuesday, we're running payroll and we're running billing at the same time. And now we do run our work file gen, rev gen overnight and as batch processes on the scheduler. But I mean, we're killing the system. I mean, if you look at the transactions that we're putting through on Wednesday and Thursday, and then on Thursdays our AP vouchers and all of that gets pulled into billing, and we're also doing all of our job cost reporting. So I mean, but Wednesdays kind of billing's happening and we're running interims, and that's kind of where we are. I mean, vouchers are getting processed, but it's not payment day. It's not, all this. So I couldn't wrap my head around it, but I am not a database. I'm a functional person who has learned some IT stuff. So that at 2:00 on Friday afternoon, y'all called me.
Yeah.
And y'all are like, it's looking bad. We'd done the restart on Thursday. Now, we are very, very lucky in that we work 4 9s and a 4. So everybody at our company is off at noon on Friday, unless they're at a random job site here or there. But
So 2 p.m. on a Friday, we're like, how do you feel about us moving everything
today. And I said, huh?
and so the backstory is we were not getting to end of resolution with this. Oracle was working with Microsoft. Microsoft was working with the device driver, the Mullinex cards that were in these dedicated hosts. But when one of those hosts would go down, there's anywhere between 8 to 15 VMs that are running on it. And it's a major impact to the business. And we're seeing no light at the end of the tunnel in terms of this technology path.
So we don't tell anybody. We don't send out an email. We're having a system outage by ignorance. Because we had already sent out the communication that everything was going to be shut down the next week. So we would much rather say, oh, guess what? We're not shutting the system down. There's no blackout. Merry Christmas. And like me, I'm like, hey, I get my 4th of July weekend back. But we had 2 people put in tickets they couldn't get in, and we explained to them that there was a system emergency. But we did not want to be sending additional IT communications. Just, we felt like too many communications were lessening their idea that we were in a stable solution. So we finished 1 or 2 in the morning, or something like that. We worked until it was done, and it took us all weekend to test everything and to get everything back up and going. But we were back up by Sunday, and Monday went off without a hitch, and then so we moved what we needed to for JD Edwards that day. Then we still had to move all the third parties, and we didn't realize when we were moving the third parties that some of the licensing was tied to machine name, or we knew we could fix IP addresses and things like that, but so we had a few little hiccups with things like that. But I think we're down to 1 server, or I don't even know if it's been moved yet.
One stream database server.
No, that one moved.
But that one moved.
Yeah, it was our non-prod.
J.D. Edwards
Uh-huh.
is still sitting there.
Yeah. And so, because we weren't worried about non-prod database, they're working. We've already applied Code Current there, so we've got to figure out with the project team and everything to move that one server. But we've gotten everything moved over, and now we're stable, and things are going. But Paul was telling me, he's like, well, when we make this move, you're going to lose some of the performance that performance gains that we had told you. Now, we were not moving because we were unhappy with the performance that we had on AWS. I mean, yeah, we all get those tickets that JDE is slow. I mean, it happens all the time, and they are very responsive. If we have an issue like that, they look and see what's running, and some report will be running and that somebody kicked off without their data selection in there, and they're hogging all the CPU and RAM and stuff that I don't understand, but that makes the computers not work right. And we'll kill that and figure out what's going on and then fix things. But we could not stay where we were. We were very, very lucky in so it was from May to July, the end of June. Every time the system spontaneously rebooted was at night. One time it affected RevRec in one particular batch, and we had to fix all of those because it was in posting, and we had to fix all of those integrity issues. But other than that, it happened in times when it wasn't running anything that was going to break anything. But my biggest fear is it was going to decide to shut down in the middle of a payroll post. We've had that happen once when we were on 8.0, and it literally took us 4 months to get all of the data back the way it needed to be. And that's like my biggest fear, no matter what, especially if it's we've got a couple of payrolls that, have 4,000 or 5,000 people in there, and with the benefits and the accruals and taxes and all the things. So we were lucky, but we felt we went ahead and made the move because we felt like our luck was running out, because it was consistently needing to be restarted faster and faster. And honestly, we didn't we're not a 24 up. We have a 2-hour outage window every day right now, but obviously you can't do everything. Scheduled, yeah. 3 to 5 maintenance window, 3 to 5 a.m. because we're only in the U.S. And so it makes these projects, when we gave the project team the timeline for the cutover, and they're like, we can do it during the day, we get to start at noon. I'm like, yeah, and maybe 11:30. They're usually really good on those days about getting everything done, and we do it mid-month, so we're not going to do it around close or anything like that. So, but they're like, yeah, I want to be on that project. Can I do that?
So to kind of double click on what Shannon had mentioned before, so running in the Optimize 3, one of the advantages of it was network I/O. So I talked about that before with the database. It's all disk I/O. The Optimize 3, for every 1 CPU, you got 4 gigabit of network bandwidth. All your disk traffic is happening across that. So for a database platform, it's great. So moving to the E5s, that's 1 gigabit. So we're cutting the network bandwidth literally by 75%. So my big concern with the move is how are we going to impact performance in doing this? So myself and Neb, kind of prior to the move, we literally spent about 4 days kind of gaming out every possible configuration on the E5s, how we were laying out the storage, what we were doing with memory. By the way, there's no such thing as too much memory when it comes to a database server. We basically came back with something where we were pretty confident that we had found a route to mitigate most of those performance considerations by moving to the platform.
And just so when he tells me that, because I called him a few times a little bit upset,
Once or twice.
Just a little, as I'm sure all of y'all can understand. And I remember in one of the calls, I said, Paul, I don't want a Ferrari in the shop. I want a Pinto that cranks every time. I may have said a Corolla, but I'm like, I don't care. I want something that's going to be reliable. If you can keep me at the performance I was at before, I'm okay with that. If we can tweak it later and make it better, great. But it's got to work.
And I think we checked the box on stability.
Yeah. So we've been stable now since the move. We've had some competing projects, and my one-stream people, we're also in the middle of a one-stream upgrade, and so they wanted everything. We as Brown and Root are very, very cautious about doing too much change at one time. I like to change one thing, give it some time to settle, make sure it works. So they didn't want to move and apply the upgrade at the same time. And that's why I'm saying I'm so thankful today, because of all the performance issues, that we didn't do the upgrade at the same time, because that would have introduced, okay, is it something with the tools package? Is it something with this? Because like when we went live on UN7 tools package, we were one of the early adopters, and because we were going live, we went live the weekend before Valentine's Day, and we're running payrolls, and we're on the phone with this fabulous developer from South Africa at 4 a.m. our time, which of course is not as bad in South Africa, but our non-prod environment, batch and logic run together, and our prod environment, they're separate servers. Well, and I didn't even, this is another term, I don't know what it means, y'all probably do, but it broke the OCM mappings. And they had to get us a fix, because we could get pre-payroll to run, but we couldn't finalize anything. And I'm like, literally, and it took us like 2.5 days to figure this out. Well, when you've got weekly payrolls, we're on like Thursday, and so to me, I'm sitting here going, okay, if pre-payroll will run, I can figure out what the checks need to be. And I sent an email to my VP of Finance, and I said, how many checks do we have? And we need to figure out how long it takes to write a check, and how many temps we need to get here to be able to do this, because we literally do not have the ability, even if we could, to print a check. We've since, because of that issue, as part of our DR, we have an AP upload that we've never used, but where
Shannon, I think we're about to run into the next session.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we actually did an AP upload template so that we could actually do AP payments to all employees should there ever be an issue with processing payrolls. So anyway, yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions?